I, 32F, resent my boyfriend, 32M, about introducing kinky sex and polyamory to me. Long story short, I was always a deeply sexual person, but growing up in a non-Western culture, South Korea, I was never exposed to kinky or BDSM culture. I am bisexual, yet I had a happy vanilla, monogamous relationship with my ex-boyfriend for about 6 years. Then I came to the US, broke up with him and explored the dating/hookup scene. I had some shitty experiences. There was an attractive athlete guy who told me I had my ex-girlfriend fucked by 5 black men and that was the best. Are you kinky? Or a muscular Russian guy who almost used a Korean woman as his sex toy without a consent. She barely spoke English. He said he later tried to pimp her out to his friend, and she finally cried and resisted. All these stories were shocking, and lowered my self-esteem a bit. And then I slept with my current boyfriend. I had known him for about 2 years, we were both international students in the same program / and sorta wrote him off because he didn't look like a serious person. Too sex positive. I didn't know the word sex positive back then, and bisexual. But after going through all the bad guys in the dating market, I gave him a chance and we started all the kinky things together. It was a Christmas break and things got sorta magical. We got totally caught in passion. We did lots of crazy stuff, rope, toys, in the car, collar, socks, foot stuff, and it blew my mind. He suddenly looked like a prince and I fell in love. Somehow he looked above my league. He's tall, preppy, blonde and blue-eyed, well-educated, well-traveled, and has a charming extroverted personality. People still give him a praise like "Bo today I fucked up a man" or "Oh his blue eyes." Initially I felt like if he were not bisexual and kinky, he would be the person who would not even like me on Tinder. My self-esteem was a bit low. And we started a sorta long-distance relationship and he demanded an open relationship. I never knew the concept of polyamory or open relationship before, but it made sense and I gave it a try. It was a rocky road. I agreed with the open relationship term partially because I was madly in love, couldn't stop thinking about him a second, and I wanted to keep him. But for the first couple months, I never slept with anyone while he was hooking up with other kinky men for some fetish stuff. He even made me say hi to one of his former male hookups who was Chinese, which I felt was humiliating as a woman and as an Asian person. He had all good intention because he believed in polyamory and ethical non-monogamy, but I was not philosophically prepared for that. In retrospect, I would have refused to do that, but at that time I did, because somehow I wanted to assimilate with the new culture that he introduced. I had the desperate need to assimilate with the Western culture in general. Then I realized that he's actually leaning towards submissive, so I started pegging him with a strap-on dildo. I bought that in a nearby adult toy store and brought it to his place. Since receiving anal sex was his ultimate taboo in his life, he got totally hit by that and started feeling really attached to me. In some sense I messed him up the same way he messed me up. He said I turned the table. He denies that that is the reason why he fell in love with me. But I sometimes still suspect so. After I started doing that, his attitude towards me changed a lot. Thinking that way doesn't give me a pleasant feeling though. While we were separate spatially, he continued to hook around and it bothered me. For example, he hooked up with a gay man. The guy tried to use popper on himself, a chemical drug that functions as a muscle relaxant / and by mistake spilled it into my BF's eye. BF doesn't do anal sex with men and I trust him on that, but the popper incident was still upsetting and disturbing. Also he once sucked a man's thing without a condom and I found it upsetting because of the risk of STD. The biggest thing that upset me was that he started watching sissification, cross-dressing and being a submissive like a girl / porn / hentais. At this point I was totally exhausted. Before then, I could make sense of most of the new concepts he introduced to me such as polyamory, open relationship, kinks, bondage, and male bisexuality, even though I had to process a lot. I tended to overthink, read a lot to understand him, and try to become an open-minded mother-like figure who can understand most of his secrets and kinks and imperfection. I was repelled by what I saw on FetLife, Kinky People's Facebook / but still tried to understand all of that. But when he started sending me cross-dressing shopping mall websites and sissification hentais, it was the last straw. I said I can't take this anymore and I don't want to continue the relationship. He reacted to me in very disappointing ways, such as getting angry, resentful, and saying that he's gonna cancel everything we planned, and he also tried to sell one of my tickets to his friend. I think he reacted to me in a childish way and it was another big turn off. Well, the thing was, we already booked lots of trips together. I was very depressed at that time and I didn't want to give up on all the trips. And I read some stupid toxic relationship coaching in my native language, saying that you should put up with your man's things one more time when you wanna give up everything / so I went to his place again. Then we reconciled. He stopped watching sissy stuff and fervently convinced me that it's not his primary kink, so he can stop completely. He still had fantasies about threesome, so he organized a session with me and a transgender man. I ended up engaging in the threesome session. It was interesting. The trans guy was very respectful. It was another attempt of mine to try to assimilate into the Western culture, since threesome is much more common and casually accepted here. Well, did I like it? It was not something I was hugely into. I just thought that I'll keep seeing him until I find someone better. I was lonely and I was not brave enough to lose him, since he became more and more affectionate. Last winter he was still organizing fetish sessions with other kinky men and I let him do so, without even caring too much. Well, he does extremely low risk activities in terms of STD, and he doesn't emotionally connect with them. So I started getting accustomed to that, in a nonchalant way. Then COVID came, and now I'm quarantined with him for 7 months now. Things are very fine. He cooks and cleans for me. We've been to lots of nice places together. We are sort of official now as a couple. We have quite a lot of sex, a little less frequently, with less energy. I perform less wild things. I watched a lot of porns and FetLife profiles. I organized a threesome with a guy I met on Tinder myself, and I had a lot of fun. I developed some disturbing sex fantasies where I worship BF's body, which I feel like I should stop fantasizing about. So the thing is, my BF became very affectionate to me after all and treats me like a queen. I'm still sort of affectionate to him even though I'm not sure I love him. I think I've been way too traumatized by the introduction of the whole new world, kinky sex / polyamory, and still didn't recover that much. I wonder if this is some sort of Stockholm syndrome where you fall in love with someone who traumatized and hurt you. I have a huge urge to talk about these things to people from my culture, Korea, but all these things sound way too foreign and monstrous and horrible. I once posted this stuff to one of the feminist forums in my native language and the reaction was super negative. People are not familiar with kinks, BDSM, and sex-positive stuff. I feel a bit isolated from my culture. I'm not sure I'm that sex-positive either, though. Too long didn't read. I got traumatized by kinky sex and polyamory stuff that BF introduced to me. Even though now I got a bit used to that, I still feel resentful about it and I don't have people to talk to. What should I do? You should find a therapist. If you can find one who's Korean or familiar with similar cultures, that'd be best. Edit, you should also reconsider your relationship with your boyfriend. Most people in the US are not particularly kinky or polyamorous. If that's not what you want in your sex life, you won't have much trouble finding people who share your perspective. There's a lot in this post where you are not living authentically and not working to ensure your emotional and physical needs are met, which points to self-esteem and internal boundary issues and possibly some problematic relationship expectations based on past issues. It's vital for your emotional and physical health to repair those issues so that you can go on to say no to things you don't want. You didn't want an open relationship and you didn't want a lot of the kink stuff you are involved in, but you did it anyway. It's important you find a community outside of the kink scene. Seeking out people who are interested in things you are interested in that have nothing to do with sex so that you can build some healthy non-sexual relationships. And it's important you go to therapy to build your boundary system and find out what you want out of your relationships. Because this is obviously not what you want from what I am reading in your post. I'm curious, who told you that engaging in kink, again, something which is fine to do privately, was a part of assimilating into Western culture. That way of thinking is incredibly toxic, and I find it difficult to believe you reached it entirely on your own. The stuff you were engaging in is pretty fringe here. Not that there's necessarily anything wrong with it, but what is wrong is that you felt like you had to do it to be accepted culturally. I hate responses on here that are like "get therapy," because I think finding a good therapist is really difficult and it can be expensive. That said, it seems like a sex therapist wouldn't be the worst idea in the world, since you don't have anyone else you feel like you can talk to. It honestly sounds like your BF is deeply addicted to sex and convinced you that engaging in all these different kinks and fetishes would empower you, despite the fact that he did a lot of things you weren't okay with and dragged you into other things which you weren't particularly interested in. I guess all I can say is that I'm really sorry that this happened to you and that you don't really owe anything to any /culture. It sounds like you are being torn between what I'd personally think are probably sexually conservative norms in Korean culture and what you have perceived as a more sexually open Western culture, and as your BF drew you towards the latter. Even if the idea of Western culture being a no-rules kink fest is a fiction, you felt more isolated in the former. It sounds cheesy, but you've got to just be yourself, and find someone that will respect that and that you are able to do the things you want to do with them without worrying about whether or not you are being true to any cultural expectations. Culture isn't a prison, it evolves constantly because people borrow the things from it which are important to them, and modify or add where they feel it is lacking. Don't lose yourself. As a Korean American woman myself, I know how hard it is to talk about sex openly with other Korean people because of the judgment and such. But if you need to talk to someone about this, you can DM me. So I highly suggest you do go see a therapist, because you did all those things that you weren't super comfortable to do. For any sex, it should be consensual without coercion. Also, don't let your loneliness be the only thing attaching you to him, because you deserve someone who loves you for you without making you do uncomfortable things. Also, it's not fair to your BF that might love you if you're not in love with them. It's not fair for you both. My girlfriend, 24F, of about 4 years, and I, 25M, moving in together. We'd like to have routine relationship checkups. Any advice on what we should include in these checkups? First off, my girlfriend and I are doing awesome. We both agree that we have great communication, we support each other, we have lots of fun, and overall it's a nicely balanced relationship. We just want to have an intentional safe time where we can be completely open and honest with each other. It can be very easy to brush issues under the rug or just simply get too busy to talk about it, so we want to plan out a periodic, maybe monthly time where we meet to discuss such things. We're thinking things like, how are we both feeling in terms of physical, mental, spiritual well-being? How are we doing sticking to our financial budget? Anything that's been bothering you lately? What are some goals you want for ourselves as individuals and as a couple? I want to hear from my fellow Redditors. What do you think of these types of routine tag-ups? And what do you suggest we talk about during these discussions? Thank you and much love to you all. Too long didn't read. Do you find it beneficial to have routine discussions with your SO? What are the most important things to touch on during these discussions? My 29F best friend, 29F, has horrible social tendencies. How do I address them? Hey everyone, I need some advice. My best friend is great, she's so sweet and kind and loving, but she has serious social issues that I cannot stand to not address anymore. Unfortunately, it's become very clear I cannot invite her to social situations if I don't try and correct it or make it known. For starters, I have told her dozens and dozens, possibly hundreds of times, I do not watch YouTube videos of makeup people, YouTube stars, etc. I do not really do Instagram people. I have no qualms that she does. but she talks to me incessantly about these people and I tell her I have no idea what you're talking about and she just keeps going. She will spend 20 plus minutes recapping a 5-minute YouTube video. This is a huge pillar of her personality, which is fine, but it is not something I want anything to do with. I invited her over to hang out with a close group of friends this Saturday and she did this again. We all said, 5 of us, that we don't do the YouTube thing and she told us we really needed to and how amazing this one influencer is, and she just kept going on and on about a YouTuber she loves who makes videos about Forex. On paper, it sounds minor, but she gets talking and talks so fast it's literally impossible to even hear the words she's saying. And again, if I ask someone, are you familiar with the Hubble Space Telescope, and it's very clear they're not interested, I'm not going to shove information down their throat. She dominates conversation in a way that is outright inappropriate and honestly, annoying. Someone will say the grass is green and she will go on a 20-minute story about how when she was in 3rd grade the grass was really green so she fell and skinned her knees, and that reminds her of this YouTube video she watched with this girl. Have you heard of her? She's so great. You'd love her videos. But anyways, where was I? She doesn't even realize that people aren't paying attention or engaged, and some of my friends actually left early and because she was dominating the conversation, interrupting constantly and not really understanding it wasn't appropriate. When it's just us, she doesn't go down the influencer/internet content rabbit holes as deeply. She's pretty in tune with my reactions and understands when to hand off conversation. I am having a Halloween party this weekend, and as bad as it sounds, after seeing for upteenth time how she pulls the energy out of the room, I don't necessarily want her there. I know this probably reads really mean, but to be honest, her behavior embarrassed me, so I'm a little peeved. But I need to talk to her without invoking shame. Another instance of this happening was last year. I had a cookie baking get together for the holidays, and a friend who was there had recently lost someone to suicide. My friend had an ex-boyfriend who committed suicide about 3 years after they broke up, and she completely turned it into talking about her ex's suicide, in graphic detail, for over an hour. Everyone left early and texted me expressing they were offended, found it inappropriate, etc. And I mean everyone in attendance, 7 other people. TL, doctor, my best friend doesn't understand social cues and has, for lack of a better word, embarrassed me in social settings. How do I talk to her about her behavior?